understand that once you read the book. Hey, hello, how are you? I'm Pia. Today we're talking all about my revision process and how I'm going into draft 2 of my book. So here on my wall, I have what I've done, and I'm going to like get into it and describe it and what's going on. But I'm first going to go over like what my plan for attacking this draft has been, because it's a little bit different, but also the same as what I usually do. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Pia. I'm writing my 3rd book, which is a retelling of a Shakespeare play in a YA to new adult style setting, and it's queer. So what I did first off is I reread a synopsis. I read like the spark notes of the play because I've read the play a few times. I wanted to just read the spark notes and really get the bare bones of like the plot point. Did that, I extracted the plot points that I was gonna carry over and I wrote those down. Then I translated those. So I said, this is what happens in the play. This is what it equals in the book. So that's my translation. The next thing that I did is I read draft 1, which is always like one of my least favorite things to do because I don't like draft 1, but I was pleasantly surprised. It was like the bones, the skeleton, what other metaphor can I use? You know how like a house, they're like, oh, this has good bones. Like I feel like draft 1 had good bones. Like was any of it good? No. But when I read it, I was like, this has good bones. And so what I did while I was reading draft 1 is I wrote down what happens in each scene. Now I have an outline, I have a beat sheet, I have like kind of all of these things already written down, but I wanted to like really, I don't know, I feel like I did follow my outline. There's certain things that come out when you're writing. So I was like, I wanted to make sure I get exactly what is happening in this current draft. And I wrote those down as well. And then I figured out what was missing. And honestly, it wasn't much. It's just a few things. And I made these scene cards, and then I'm gonna get into my rewrite, which I haven't started yet. But first, let's get into what I did. Even if you can read this, which I don't think you can. My handwriting's so small, I don't think you can read this. I have laid out the chapters of the book here. And starting from the beginning, this used to be the prologue. It's no longer the prologue, it's chapter 1 now. To the epilogue. Now it does have an epilogue, which I didn't write in the first draft. I have color-coded it, as you can tell. Here's how the color coding system works. We have the blue equaling to the retelling portion. These are retelling heavy chapters. Now you may notice that in this, say, blue chapter, we have the kind of setup of the retelling portion. Need it in the first chapter. It's kind of starts the whole thing, you know? We have a highlight of yellow. Now, the yellow denotes the other plot line. What are the other plot lines? I don't know, there are too many to that. Mostly just dealing with like my main character and her side characters' motivations outside of the pink, which is the romance. That's the predominant color on the board, obviously. This is a romance forward book. It's probably the most romance heavy book I've written. Not saying it's steamy. Why is everyone asking me that? But to say this generally follows the plot structure of a romance novel rather than like a contemporary novel, which is what I feel like I've been writing until this point. You know what I mean? We also have a couple of white note cards, which are these kind of mixed bag chapters. So for example, this chapter, if I could count, chapter 10, we have both things happening with the other plot lines, the yellow, as well as with the romance plot line. Are you surprised this doesn't happen more? I kind of am. I kind of feel like this should happen more, but the kind of thing that's like unsaid, that remains unsaid in this like visual representation of the book, is that like the romance is like happening throughout. Romance is like the through line of everything. So even though it's like sad, it's not sad. But then these two chapters all have like each thing represented, the yellow, the blue, and the pink. So that's interesting. And then we also end with the pink. If you see, the last 7 chapters are all having to do with the pink storyline, all having to do with the romance plot. We have kind of the, I'm not gonna like go into like what these mean in like the classic story structure, because like that's boring. I know that we have like, yeah, the climax is over here, and then we kind of have all the things that lead up to our resolution at the end. I think it actually looks pretty good. One thing I did kind of come across while I was doing this, which I will note, I love the color distribution. I love that there's a lot of pink, but I love how dispersed the yellow and the blue are. I like that we kind of like switch it up in different chapters. I am changing the perspective of this book in this draft, which is really new for me. I have not written a book in 3rd person ever, and this book is now going to be in 3rd person omniscient, which is so insane, but it's for reasons. It's for a reason. That's why like kind of skips around a little bit, and that's why like when we're jumping to like this blue card, for example, from the romance, these are different characters that we're following. So that's kind of that point. I really needed to break up this part. This is kind of like the middle section of the book. This is the second act. And I wanted to break up this section because I think it's necessary. And so I did put this yellow index card here. And if you do notice, it is blank. I don't know what's going here, but I do think that we need to get back to one of the other plot lines. Not a retelling plot line per se. I'm thinking one of the main characters, like, other things that they have going on, because they have their own, aside from like wanting to live happily ever after, which like who doesn't, they also have other things going on. So I'm thinking that's going to be this chapter, and I think we can bring in some of the side characters from the retelling portion and from the other side plots into this chapter. And so I just kind of put that there as a placeholder because I feel it needs to kind of go in between these two, especially since like these two chapters here, these are the like maybe we could fall in love part. And I do think there needs to be like a little break from that to like, here's what we missed on Glee. Like, this is what else is going on with the cast. I am kind of thinking about this a lot in terms of like a movie for a couple different reasons. Just because it is third person omniscient and I'm following more people than I have before. I haven't had like this big of a cast of characters, and I have expanded it in the second draft. So that's kind of insane. But also because it is taking large inspiration. It's taking a lot of inspiration from a certain movie that is one of the comps for this, and I do want it to just kind of feel like it has that kind of energy, that kind of dynamic movement to it. So that's kind of why things are arranged as they're arranged. We kind of do, if you see, we kind of drop off the retelling portion, which is something I wanted to talk about because I'm not actually taking the ending of the retelling into this book, which I didn't do in the first draft either, but I didn't really talk about it. So this is, I don't know if it's considered one of Shakespeare's problem plays. I don't think it is, but it's one of his comedies, but it's not, I don't like the ending. I don't think the ending makes sense, and I don't know how to end this book being true to that play without it just like being totally like out of left field. So I'm not doing it like that. I do think there could be kind of like maybe in the epilogue, a little nod to something like that happening. But that's why the blue kind of like tampers out around here, because that's kind of where they're happy in the play, and then something happens at the end of the play where it's just like, what? So that's kind of why the blue ends around here, and it just kind of finishes off with the romance. So as I've re-outlined this is my new re-outline. I don't have this like written down in a document. I think I'm just gonna take a picture of it. I've just written this all like so many times and I just don't want to do it again. I do think having this just on my wall for all of eternity is probably not the best idea. So in this new outline, I have 35 chapters, which is 6 more than I had before. Wait, sorry, that just shocked my brain. Okay, so I'm writing 6 all new chapters, even though most of these are kind of entirely going to be new. That's kind of the problem with this second draft, is I am changing so much of the story. I am adding a lot more of the retelling. I'm adding new characters. I'm changing the tense and the, well, am I changing the tense? No, I'm changing the perspective, and I'm aging it up, which is kind of a big thing I was thinking about in writing my first draft. And I recently watched a movie called Shithouse, which is by Cooper Raiff, who's one of my favorite directors and writers. Love him so much. And I kind of wanted to like play with like this being a freshman in college vibe. So it's now moved to freshmen. They're all freshmen in college. Well, they're not all freshmen in college. They're all in college. Most of them are freshmen. Kind of some of our side characters are like upperclassmen. That is changing like a lot. A lot of like the context and the settings have changed. There also was going to be a time jump. In the first draft, there was a time jump from the, what was the prologue to the first chapter. There is no longer that time jump because I only did that to get to like an older age. And I was like, actually, there's no time jump in the play. Why am I doing that? It's funnier if there's no time jump. And you'll understand that once you read the book. There's no time jump anymore. We start as freshmen in college, and we do kind of, the thing I'm thinking is it spans like the first semester. The first draft also spanned a semester, so I'm thinking that's gonna be staying the same. It's just gonna be the first semester of college. So a lot of the context and the setting is changing. So while I am writing new chapters, the old chapters, a lot is changing with them. I thought they were changing more than I'm thinking about it now. Maybe it's not changing that much. I was really like, huh, they're gonna be changing a lot. But the more I'm thinking about it, I'm like, it's going from a high school classroom to a college classroom. It's going from a high school party to a college frat party. These are not huge changes, Pia. They're still like changing. I have to like figure out how to kind of like age up the dialogue. One thing I'm doing is kind of like, my other books tend to be more like, depending on the character, but like my first book, for example, like is a very sweet, like rom-com, YA rom-com, and there's not like a lot of like cursing in it. It's like very like, but there's definitely gonna be a lot of like kind of slang and language like that, and just kind of like more colorful language, I think, in this draft. And I think that it's gonna be a lot of fun. There's a lot of like more comedic beats happening in this draft as I've planned it. I think one of my favorite things about like a Shakespeare play is like the overhearing, which I had in the first draft, which I just came up with by myself. But there is like a full scene of it in the play, which is this blue card right here, which is like super fucking important. The way that I'm translating it to the contemporary YA college setting is gonna be really funny, and I'm very excited. That is kind of what I've done to get prepared for the second draft. I might do like a couple vlogs here and there. It's kind of, when I write second drafts, it's not like the most exciting process, because I literally, it's such a weird thing to describe because I'm not like writing new words every day. I'm kind of just like revising what's already written and just like changing what I have. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a new document, and I'm gonna put that fresh document right beside my old document and just kind of have them side by side and next to each other. One thing I think about this draft is I think it's gonna expand a whole lot, not only adding 6 more chapters, but I do think that in general I know my characters better, I know my setting a lot better, I changed the setting. I have a better kind of like understanding of those things, so I think building out the world and stuff of the book and the characters. If you watched my vlog where I was writing this book, the first draft was like, what was it? Like less than 60K. So I'm thinking it's gonna be more around the 90,000 word mark. I'm hoping it doesn't reach 100. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm writing this from April to May. So I have all of April and all of May to write this. I might take some of June as well. I don't really have a huge plan for June, but I do want to start drafting something new in July and August. So I do want to get this done by summertime. So wish me luck. Let me know how your writing projects are going or how you do your revision plan. I just completely re-outlined. I've never like done that big of an overhaul for the second draft, but I think it was necessary for all the kind of changes I was making. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all of the things, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!